Hello and welcome to the Ledger Lounge, an accounting and business advisory podcast brought to you by James Scott at Manchester. My name's Matthew Taylor.
And I'm Katie Allan. Welcome to the Ledger Lounge.
Welcome to this week's Ledger Lounge. Today we are joined again by Tom, and I've got Katie with me as well.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Today we're going to dive into something that's probably not top of everybody's priority list or is the most exciting topic in the world, but stick with us. It's one of the smartest things I think you can do, and especially if you start early. So we're going to be talking about pensions. Now, one of the most important things you can do with a pension is starting early, because the earlier you get in, the more growth and the more you're going to be able to benefit from it at some point in the future. So I think, Tom, you joined James Scott at 17, nearly 18.
Yep.
And as soon as you were 18, you thought, there's some free money to be had here.
Yeah, that's it. I think the mandatory age is 22, isn't it? Something like that. But especially when you're so young and so early on, those 4 years are probably the most expensive 4 years to not be on it. So as soon as I was 18 and getting me proper salary, I was straight on your door. I opted in. And I've been in it ever since, entering the people's one. And, it probably made a huge difference already.
I think you have to view it differently. Like, some people will view it on the basis of, I'm getting paid less money every month because I've got this pension contribution going out. But then on the flip side, it's actually it's kind of a pay rise, isn't it? Because you get the 5% took off you, but your employer pays 3%. But if you opt out, your employer's not going to say, I'll give you a 3% pay rise.
Yeah,
you've got to see it as it's free money.
It's like having a really long-term bank account, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's just going in there and you can have it when you retire.
Yeah.
And not look at the 5% as a couple of pints in envy on a Saturday night.
Well, luckily I've never been. Never have and never will.
Yeah, you've never lived then. The 5%, you actually get tax relief on it as well, don't you?
Yeah, you don't just have to have your workplace pension. I mean, I've got one with James Scott and one that I just put a small contribution in every month just to top it up.
Yeah.
Two separate ones.
Even if it's a private one like that, you still get your tax back, don't you?
Yeah, you still get your tax relief. Although, I hope my dad doesn't ever listen to this episode, because he is constantly saying, have you increased it yet? And I'm like, yes, Dad.
Well, better in your pocket, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
We can just refer to you.
It's just annoying when you log into it and it says, your retirement age is 68. And you're like, yes, I know.
With a private pension, you can retire a little bit earlier, I think.
Yeah, mine's like called a Target 55 fund, whatever. I don't know what it's called.
As soon as you become eligible, you can take that 25% lump sum, can't you?
Yeah.
So that's like a bit earlier than your state retirement age, and typically if you've got enough in that, you could just live off that lump sum.
I mean, I probably won't, because I put the better minimum in it every month. But I do need to increase it.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest benefits, I always call it snowball effect. So if you put a £5 in today and it gets £1 of interest or growth in your pension in 12 months, then the next 12 months is growing based on the 6. So you're getting interest on your interest, or you're getting growth on your growth. So roll that snowball down the hill for 40 years.
It's the same regular investing into, if you put it into your own, stocks, ISA, whatever it is, it's growing on its own growth, isn't it? That's what you just said, yeah. And the earlier you get in there, you're getting those extra years of growth on that. And if you think of it, rather than at the start where it's a £5 turning into £6, that year that you've possibly missed out on is actually going to be at the end, where it's going to be, £5,000 on top of £6,000.
Yeah.
So I think they call it the power of compounding, don't they?
Power of compounding.
I think it's just not discussed enough, is it? I don't think pensions to the younger audience. I think people think of pensions as, it's for old people, older people.
It's not the most attractive thing to talk about.
If you start saving when you're in your 40s, you've got 25 years of catching up to do, which, like Matthew just said, isn't going to grow as well as if you would have just put that £5 in, £10 in, 20, whatever you can afford.
Yeah, how quick 25 years actually go, though. I say time flies when you're having fun.
I didn't say it.
Yeah, I've been banned from saying that today, but I've got it in.
Yes. Going back to what we were saying in earlier episodes about not knowing about pension contributions, and I think it's probably a wider issue about financial knowledge that maybe that could be brought into the school curriculum a bit more, so that people know about savings products, know about mortgages, know about pension contributions.
I think maybe a lot of people know about Help to Buy ISAs, but they don't really know much about. All right, once I've done that and I've used that, I've got a house now. They don't then know about. I should put that money into a pension.
Yeah, I think like some banks do offer kind of like money lessons. Have to be savvy with it all like that. But again, it's only kind of if you're interested in it for a start anyway, you'd go and look for it. So unless you're young and your parents kind of like sign you up for these kind of courses, but it's not really widely known, is it? If being safe and want to smart investing, budgeting is a big one. How many people don't have a proper budget and end up getting in a bit of money trouble? And one of the first things that they stop doing is putting in that pension.
Yes.
Whereas really, you should be taught from a young age. Actually, it's one of the most important things to be putting that money into.
Yeah.
And the last thing to cancel.
But maybe there's an opportunity there for people to offer those services.
Yeah.
Maybe in schools, and maybe people should be talking to local authorities, or maybe, I don't know, is it probably the wider government?
I know they get like careers advisors, don't they, that come into school. You're usually in like your last year or something, where you should be part of that discussion that once you've got a job, you can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never got a careers meeting because there was a fire alarm when
conveniently
it was supposed to be. So I never got a careers meeting. One thing I learned today, I didn't realise, was about you can start a pension very, very early, even for your children.
Yeah.
You were explaining that earlier.
Yeah. So I didn't know about it until probably about 12 months ago, and I thought it was another one of them, I don't know, like TikToks or news things that my dad's read that I thought it's definitely not right, this dad. Like, surely you can't do this. But yeah, you can actually open a pension for a newborn baby. Obviously, they can't get their hands on it until they're 68 or maybe 70 by that point. But it's quite a good thing to do because, like I said, you get tax relief on it, and that's money that perhaps would have just gone and sat in a bank account for them until they turned 18 for a car, but maybe they can save their own money for that.
Talk about compounding, add another 18 years
or
onto
you can just go on my insurance and hopefully borrow mine.
Yeah, so you're a bit late to the game there, Tom, then.
Aye. I think I'll be there in the hospital filling the forms in. It's still a bit away from me, that little one's.
Yeah. I think starting early, I mean, I'm not saying that people should start the minute they've had a child.
But even just get it open.
Just get one open and
put a pound in it, have it open, and then if you have got any spare money at the end of the month.
We have a rule, like, so when it's Archie's birthday or Christmas, if people give him money in a card, if it's less than £10, we'll put it in like a wallet in the cupboard and we'll get him a toy with it. But if it's more, then it goes into his bank account. Now it gets transferred into his pension.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if you go back to like the tax relief on pensions, I think what a lot of people don't also realise is how you can tax plan with it.
Yeah.
And I think, I probably have a couple of experiences in the past where a few clients, I've had to have that conversation. But if all of a sudden you're going to get a big hefty bonus at the end of the year, or you're getting these like annual pay rises and things like that, or, your benefits in kind from work are pushing you over, sometimes it can be a lot more tax effective to actually put a load into your pension and get that tax relief back. No, yeah. I did have a client once where it was going to push him over the threshold where he's going to start losing his personal allowance. So obviously our advice to him was then to put a lot of this extra money that he doesn't need anyway, he's kind of just sitting there, put it all into this pension. It'll lower your income for the year and you'll actually probably come out with more money net because you're keeping your personal allowance.
Yeah.
And it seems like, I suppose it's kind of where you get the value of having a tax advisor, but it's more than just retirement. It can actually save you money today.
Yeah.
And put more money in your pocket.
I think we focus mainly on employee contributions so far. So where your employer will either pay the 3% minimum that they have to do under the workplace pension, or they even match it, or sometimes you get an employer who put everything in and you don't have to contribute. So as long as it's 8%, the workplace pension is satisfied. But if you're self-employed or you're a director of your own company, then you've got opportunities to put pension contributions in as well. And if you're a director of a company, you can pay money directly from the company as an employer contribution into your pension. And that will come off the corporation tax bills. If you've got money as a self-employed person, you pay that and that will be grossed up. So if you paid £8,000 in, that's a really bad example, isn't it? If you paid £10,000 in, you get another £2,000
you get
put in
12.
by the government. And if you were a higher rate taxpayer, you get another higher rate relief on that. Those are all subject to sort of maximum of
When
60,000.
was it when the auto enrolment? Was it 2016 when it become a UK or England?
Yes, I
UK
think it
thing,
was.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember, I didn't work at James Scott then, but I remember like receiving all these letters, working on the payroll, and having these discussions with people, employees, and then all of them opted out. They knew about it, but again, like Matthew said, if they taught you a little bit about it in school and you was a bit more knowledgeable, I can guarantee they would have all stayed in it. But they opted out because they thought, I'm not having. I don't think it was 5% then. I think it was 3%.
I think it was 1 and 1
yeah,
or 1 and 2.
That.
Yeah, I think it was 3%.
I'm not having this took out of my wages. I want it now. And then some of them have probably retired now with
no money,
state pension.
But how many people
pension.
do you see who are retiring? They've just not getting any money, and they've lived and worked their whole life, and what have they got to show for it? You know, some of them don't retire at all. Some people are still working, aren't they, to pay bills?
Some people aren't even eligible for the full state pension either, are they?
I think that's historically. I think that people didn't see pensions as a priority, so didn't make those contributions. And now with the advent of the workplace pension, I think that more of the workforce so if you were 16 or 18 in 2016, in 40 years' time, they're going to be far better placed.
I suppose it's got quite a long lead time, hasn't it, to see the results?
Yes,
is the only thing.
Do you think they'll ever stop then? State pension. Like I at first thought, they're bringing this out to stop state pension, but they can't do, can they? Because
an interesting one, and I suppose it kind of like to get a bit more political into with it all. But it kind of the way the national insurance is set up, it'd be very, very hard for them to try and cut it because there'd be uproar, wouldn't there? Your national insurance, your years of contribution is supposed to be
towards
going for that, isn't it? And
yeah, and I think if a state pension was based, if you were reliant only on a pension that you contributed into, then people who take leave for childcare or if they're the maternity or paternity leave, they're going to be missing out on those big chunks of contributions. So you couldn't restrict the pension.
I just always wondered whether.
I think that's probably what they bring it out after the war. I think, didn't they? And I think that's probably it forever, isn't it? You know, this like cradle to grave nanny state kind of thing they've got, don't they? You'll be looked after, and I think the state pension's probably here to stay for the rest of the time. Yeah,
it feels right that we've got a state pension.
It's that expected security, even though it's not a lot of money, is it? If you have the full one, it's not it's not a great deal of money, but it helps, doesn't it? And I suppose if you are planning quite savvy, every little helps.
Start early if you're an employee, or even if you're self-employed.
Yeah, I think start early and stay in.
I think
don't stop.
Don't stop.
I was 21 when I think my mother sat me down at the dining room table with a financial advisor who told me I was going to be a millionaire by the time I was 55 or something, which I think it was probably in the days before there were rules on promising the earth and delivering not the earth. So 20 quid a month going in since I was 21. I think I benefited from it. And
I think trying to explain to someone though, it's £20 a month now, but in the future, if you not for that 1 month, you're not putting 20 quid in, but it's not going to be 20 quid when you come to retire. And when you think of it like that, that's when it changes how you see it.
I always feel that about like your mortgage. So today you've got a mortgage and it's an amount a month, say 500 quid a month.
I wish.
But in 25 years' time, that 500 quid won't ever feel like that.
No. And you see your statements, don't you, your mortgage, and that's the other way around. Is your first payments are like totally interest, and then you start paying your capital towards the end.
Yes.
So think of it the other way around. For your pension, you're paying all the capital in now. You get to reap the benefits of all that interest over time.
Yeah. Good advice. Nice analogy. That I like that. Yeah.
Can I say?
Yeah.
I think start small. Start with a small amount, so you're used to it, and you're used to that outgoing every month or week or however you get paid. And then just slowly increase it. Like you said, if you get a pay rise every year or you get a bonus, you can throw a little bit more in. Or
I suppose the beauty of the workplace one, it's all automatic, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're getting a pay rise and it's staying at that combined 8%, it's going to naturally grow as you progress through your career anyway, isn't it? So it probably makes it easier for young people if you can kind of just forget about it. You've never seen it in your pay slip. If you're in there right from the start anyway, it's not money that you've never seen before. So you can just live to what's on your pay slip.
Yeah.
And that funding
And it's
money's just
easier
gonna
as
be
well
there.
because, I mean, I imagine when you set up your pension at 21, there was no app for it or online portal. No, they weren't. You
No,
would have
there
just
wasn't.
probably got like an annual statement or whatever,
Yes.
probably gone, oh,
Yeah.
like you wouldn't have been that interested to look at it really, would you?
No.
Whereas now both of mine are on my phones.
Yeah,
Not
I've got
that I look
mine.
at it all the time because it probably, I would
I
cry.
like to look at that,
38 years.
that projected value on mine.
But they've made it so much easier for people to manage it with computers and apps and everything else. I don't think I've had an annual statement in the post for years.
I don't think I've ever had one. I think mine have always been digital.
Are yours still on paper?
Yes. Mine come on like goat vellum, written in.
You say they're talking not long
written
now.
with a quill.
Wax stamps at the back of the paper.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Matthew.
No, that's fine. There's one thing you do realise when you get to approaching. I suppose, am I approaching retirement age? I suppose some people. I've got friends who have retired already, and I think they were working in bigger organisations and probably paid more into their pensions, and so they were able to retire at 55.
I think the bit of a funny one I've always had is no matter who you talk to, I think you only have one or two people removed from someone who's worked at British Aerospace, and as one of them, their British Aerospace pensions that they've cashed in.
Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, I couldn't tell you the figures, but he did his 25 years service and probably over that 25 years paid in, let's say, £15,000 out of his wages, and it was worth way more than that.
Exactly. And those are the old style of pensions. They're pretty rare nowadays, aren't
Yeah,
they?
I don't think they do it anymore.
I don't know
Yeah,
whether the
you know,
aerospace
But
was.
just like, having asked around, I bet you're probably related to, or probably one or two people removed from knowing someone who works
I mean,
at
it was
British Aerospace.
it employed quite a lot of
It was
at Manchester,
it
didn't
was
it? Really,
huge
like
down,
it
yeah,
was
it
one of
was
the
down.
biggest employer.
I applied for an apprenticeship there and I got turned down.
There you go.
Really?
And the rest is it. And the rest
I
is
could have been
history.
retired now, couldn't I?
I think another one with pensions is that early retirement. If you get in early, as soon as you get to that earlier retirement age where you can take your lump sum, you can go part-time or you can start working. It'll tide you over until you get your full state pension.
Yeah.
And, you can start dripping down from what the rest of that account is. But if you put in now and you've got 300-400 grand in that account,
a lot of people's aim is you don't want to be paying a mortgage still when you're in your 60s. I think a lot of people they want to by 55 be mortgage free anyway.
Yeah.
So then if you can be mortgage free and you get your lump sum.
You can live your life while you're still young enough to be able to live it.
And mortgage payments aren't going to be £500 then, are they? They're going to be like,
Not
God knows what.
£500 now.
In
That's
my
a week.
defence of my failure at aerospace, I don't think I wanted to work there anyway.
My dad did, this is going off subject, but when they used to work night shifts and day shifts, so everyone on the day shift would work twice as hard. So the people on the night shift could just go to the pub and the chippy and just maintain the machines because they'd do all the work. And then obviously you had shift patterns. Then when they swapped and he was on days, they'd work twice as hard.
And we're flying around in
And
their
then in the
aeroplanes.
summer, they used to lie on the roof and sunbathe on the roof, all of them.
Of course, we focused on small employers here, and we've also self-employed and maybe touched on being a director a little bit. But a lot of the bigger organisations offer pensions as well, and I think their pension offering has been ingrained in the
Part of the culture, isn't
the
it?
part of the culture for even before workplace pensions were. So having a bigger employer can benefit you, and I think Tom, you probably got family members that have worked within larger organisations.
Absolutely. So the NHS, I think, is probably one of the top 5 biggest employers on the whole planet. I think I've read that recently. I think there's well over 1.5 million people. It's an unbelievable amount of employees they've got. And I think one of the biggest draws for the NHS is their pension. The amount they put in is it's unmatched by the private sector unless you're putting in private. You do your service in the NHS, or probably the same for the other public sector ones, the police force and the army. When they do come to retire, it's a king's ransom that's in the pot. So, call it the last year or so, when my girlfriend was looking for a job, we kind of recommended to us, look into the NHS, and it was something she'd never actually heard of, not being English. She didn't know the NHS was really a thing. And when you kind of explain to her how, some of the bonuses you get and the benefits you get of working there, including this amazing pension, she now works in the NHS as the rest of me entire family. They look after them.
Yeah.
And like you said, that's probably part of the culture now is people will stay in the NHS for their entire lives for these kind of benefits that they get, and it kind of builds that loyalty, I suppose.
Yeah, it builds loyalty, and with the police force as well. Again, I've got friends who have all retired at 55. They get a commutation at 55 and buy a camper van and off they go. And
I think in a way it also kind of spurs them on to progress in the job. If they're putting these, I believe, like 10% minimum kind of thing into the pensions and the rest maybe 15%. They're kind of strive that bit to go up the bandings in the public sector, earn more salary and put those bigger points in a way. When you're in the private, you get your wages and it's like that. But when your wages like publicly put out there, with the banding system that they've got, you can kind of even look at it yourself and do your own little calcs and think, how much more am I actually going to get in a pension here? If I go from saying that band 4 to that band 5 salary, it kind of wants people to actually progress in the jobs that they've got there, and it probably builds better people.
Nice incentive for career progression there, then.
I'm saying that can't be a bad thing, can it? Especially for things that, government funding and public sector that the country relies on.
So we've focused here on pensions. There are other ways of saving for your long-term future and maybe your mid-term future as well, where you can get some tax relief or some contribution from the government. I think you did it with your Help to Buy ISA, which I don't think they're available anymore.
No, they're not. Yeah, so I'd recently bought my first home, and luckily when I was a lot younger, I opened one of those Help to Buy ISA accounts. So all my savings that I've put in over the years, the government tops up by 25%. And I suppose, the amount that you get back from that was a maximum of $3,000. It pays for your solicitor's fees. It goes towards your deposit. It's, it's quite a good return on investment. That is probably better than anything you'd get, from like traditional savings accounts or investments, things like that. Obviously, like you say, they've closed the Help to Buy ISA down now, but they have replaced the government with something called the Lifetime ISA.
The LISA.
The LISA. And I think that's a bit more free with what you can do with the money. It doesn't have to be used on a house. It can go towards things like retirement. And again, you can put $4,000 a year in and they'll give you 25% on that. So you get your £1,000. You can put more in. Obviously, you won't get that extra bonus. Also, it's probably the smartest way to do it is to do the £4,000 per tax year. That one's aimed more for like younger people. So you have to be over 18 but below 40, so you can use it in your later life. But it can be used towards things like your first house, stuff like that. And again, that 25% is probably one of the best returns you can get on your savings.
Yeah.
So they combined a couple of savings products into a lifetime ISA.
I think it probably makes...
Maybe simplified it a bit.
Yeah, I think it probably helps them advertise it a bit better, doesn't it? And helps get, British people doing savvy investments and savvy savings. With the LISA, you can withdraw your money when you're over 60, when you're buying a first house, or if you are diagnosed terminally ill. So it's kind of like, it's for that later in life, but there's a few different scenarios you can have it. So it can be rooted for younger people buying the first home or old people towards retirement. And obviously that money in there as well, if you are diagnosed ill, unfortunately. At least there's some money there you can go out on a high or if it's in the family. I don't know.
You could have a great funeral.
Yeah. It's probably the same way. If you're a young person, you put into that, you're below 40, aren't you?
Yeah.
If you're diagnosed ill, no one really is planning on going that early, are they? So you've probably maybe not quite made your funeral plans yet and things like that.
I suppose a lot of people aren't buying houses now until they're like well into their 30s, if not 40s. So if you've been putting that money away since you was 18 and you've had 12 years of paying into a LISA, then you'll have quite a bit of...
You get your growth, don't you, as well?
So quite a hefty deposit for your first house.
Well, yeah, if you can do your $4,000 a year, obviously if you're maxing that out every year plus your government bonus, it add up quite quickly.
Yeah.
But I think, even outside like the Lifetime ISA, there's other ISAs and savings platforms, investment platforms you can have if, like most banks offer it.
Yeah.
There's, trading platforms you can go on where you get your...
212.
Yeah, things like that. Where
well-known thing now,
you've got your annual investment limit that you get from the government tax-free. So there's ones that are, tax-free, or you get your tax relief on it from the government up to, your limit for the year. But it's kind of that same one. It's obviously your private money, and whatever you want to do with that, you can do with it. But, you put into like investments, go into stocks and shares and, bonds and things like that. And you can kind of watch it grow in real time. So you don't have to go through like government programs and schemes and pensions. You can go and do it private. You can set up an account, invest in what you want to invest in, or use a ready-made investment portfolio from somebody else, or the S&P or something like that, and do smaller short-term investments if you want, or keep that running as well at the same time.
Yeah.
But that one, I've got instant access to your money.
So pensions, LISAs,
British
ISAs,
Aerospace.
British Aerospace. We've covered
Police, NHS.
quite a lot of ground here today. So I think probably the advice would be if you are thinking about pensions, speak to your employer, see what they've got to offer you. If you want to go out to a scheme outside your employer, or you've got you're self-employed, or you're a director of a company, then speak to a financial advisor who will be able to help you.
I think so. I think if you're thinking about the future at all, look at what tools are out there and seek out a professional.
Yeah.
And plan it. Speak to your accountant, because they can help you with planning. And most of them will all have some guides to set you on your way, and so you can understand it.
So the main advice as well is don't delay it. If you're thinking about
start now, don't
do
wait.
it now. Don't even put it off a week. Get it done with.
The Ledger Lounge is brought to you by James Scott Accounting and is hosted by Matthew Taylor and Katie Allan. For more information, visit jamesscott.com. This podcast is recorded at and produced by KUPOD Productions, audio by Matt Dean and video by Eddie Corteen. For more info, visit kupod.co.uk.